SKYPEAnxietycenter.com.
I started getting anxiety 4 months ago. It just appeared out of the blue. I've never had this in my life. I don't know what the cause was. It just started with these symptoms. It started with just real mild symptoms of a knot in the throat and a lump in the stomach for several months that I could just pretty much ignore. But then in July, it just slammed me with severe anxiety where I feel, the chest aching and the knots in the lump in the throat, the knots in the stomach. But the main symptom I feel is, it's hard to describe. It's just this awful swirling feeling in my stomach and my gut that just intensifies and intensifies and intensifies. And it can go on for hours and hours and hours without a break. And I don't know what started it. I can't, I'm not a person who is, I don't have repetitive thoughts. I'm not constantly worrying about things or, can't get things out of my mind. It's just the physical symptoms that are hitting me and have gotten worse over the past 4 months till the point where it's becoming unbearable, and I'm not knowing what to do. I mean, I'm starting to try practicing the strategies that you've given. I'm having a hard time containing my emotions in response to the anxiety.
Sure.
Not having meltdown. Every few days I'll have a meltdown and I'll just shake and cry and just fall apart. And I know I'm sure that's not helping any. Yeah. But I'm having a really hard time containing that. And can anxiety just come out of the blue for no reason?
Well, it's kind of a twofold question. Anxiety is a behavior, and anxiety behaviors don't come out of the blue. We cause them. So that's one part of it. Number two, symptoms created by anxiety, yes, absolutely, can just pop up, and there they are.
Well, I'm talking about the symptoms. Okay. I don't know what the behavior is. I can't identify any behavior that began it, that started it.
Sure. All right. So if you're talking about symptoms, yes, symptoms of stress, including the stress anxiety can cause, can come out of the blue for no apparent reason. In fact, that's one of their hallmarks. They just show up. And a lot of times when our symptoms show up for the first time, it's the first indication we are anxious. A lot of times we don't know that we're anxious until our symptoms appear, and then we track down our symptoms to find out it's anxiety related. And as we track that back, we say, oh, okay, some of these things I'm actually doing that I think are normal are actually anxious behaviors. So there's two things that I would suggest is, one, if you're having these symptoms, have you seen a doctor?
Yes, I have seen the doctor. I've had all kinds of blood tests done. Okay. Nothing comes out. I've gone to the psychiatrist. Yeah. I fought it for a long time, but they put me on medication, and now I'm probably going to come off of it because it's not doing any good. Okay. And I'm terrified about coming off of it. So now I'm getting all this anxiety about trying to come off it, because I know you can go into bad withdrawal symptoms.
What kind of medication do you have? Do you know what the name is?
Remeron.
Oh yeah, okay, sure. Yeah. You don't have to worry about that one too much. You can usually come off those without incidents, so don't have to worry about that one.
Well, see, are you seriously?
Yeah. Now you don't want. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You don't want to come off any of these right away, like abruptly. You want to do a taper process. Yeah. But if you do a proper taper with Remeron, we have seen very little incidences of people struggling with that one.
What would your definition of a proper taper be?
Well, I would like you to talk with your pharmacist about a proper taper regime, because it depends.
Because the doctor says just stop it, and I'm like, no way.
What? Your doctor told you to stop? Wow.
Yep. 2 doctors told me just stop it, and I'm like,
How much are you on per day?
Only 7.5 milligrams.
Okay, so it's not a whole lot.
It's a small amount, and but the problem is, because it's such a small amount, it's hard to cut the tablet any smaller.
Sure, yeah.
To taper, and I've read online that it comes in a liquid form, but I don't know whether it's available here or not, because that would be the only way I can think of to properly taper.
Well, you might also want to do splitting your days. This is why it's really important to talk with a pharmacist about how to come off of that medication.
Rather
And
than a psychiatrist.
oh, totally, yeah, yeah. And if someone said just to stop it, that's really bad advice in my opinion. But
I know.
you can stagger it and stretch it out so you get about the same kind of effect without having to reduce the dosage. So I would talk with your pharmacist and go from there.
Because I've been on, there's a website, Surviving Antidepressants. I don't
Yeah,
know if you're familiar with that,
there's a lot of
but
them. Yeah, go ahead.
they tell you to taper 10% a month
Yeah.
until you're off. But that would be impossible unless I had a liquid.
Yeah, and it's going
I
to
don't know.
vary from medication to medication too, dosage and all that. So, you don't want to do a horribly long taper with these antidepressants because it's not necessary. Like if you're on a benzo, that would be a different story. But antidepressants, you can usually come off of them relatively quickly without experiencing too much hardship. So
Define
I
quickly.
wouldn't be too concerned about Remeron.
Really? Yeah. Well,
Yep.
what would your definition of quickly be? Relatively quickly.
Well,
2 months?
again, I would need to know more about you to be specific, and that's why
Yeah.
I recommend talking with a pharmacist. They would know your
Right.
history, how long you've been taking it. If there's has been increases or decreases in doses. If you've been taking it faithfully every day, what time of day you take. All those
Yeah.
things would
Yeah.
make a difference. But usually with antidepressant, if you cut it back, even over 2 or 3 months, that's considered a slow taper coming off an antidepressant.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think with
Okay.
Remeron, since you're such a low dose, you could probably, look at, being free of it within a month or so, a little bit longer. Just because
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
it's really
Okay.
not that
That's
impacting.
totally not what that website I go on says, but
I know that's
they're
yeah,
looking at also the worst case scenario that people
yeah,
have. Some people have horrible
yep.
results when they go off too fast.
Well, and a lot of thing too is they don't talk about is a lot of the times we struggle with after effects of coming off of medication, not because of the medication itself, but because anxious behaviors return, or because there's stimulation involved. I'll give you an example. If a person's hyperstimulated, and they're having
Yeah.
symptoms and they're finding the medication not working, so they decide to taper off the medication. And then once they're off the medication, they have a horrible time. Well, it's usually because of the hyperstimulation, not because of the medication. Antidepressants, other than a few nasty ones like Prozac, they're pretty easy to come off with few hardship. Again, not like a benzo or a tranquilizer, but they're
Hmm.
usually easy to come off. Again, it
Hmm.
depends on the dose and if there's multiple medications involved. Another one that's more difficult to come off is the
Paxil.
SNRIs. Yeah, Effexor. Uh,
Paxil's a really bad one.
sorry?
Paxil is a bad one too.
Paxil is another bad one. Yeah, there's the three ones I don't like to see people on just because they are difficult. But yeah, again, Remeron, yeah, I wouldn't be concerned at all with that. So
Well, the dose I'm at is not helping me, and it's below the therapeutic dose. But
yeah.
I don't want to keep going up, not knowing whether it's going to do me any good or not. I don't know whether it will help or not.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we have to keep in mind that antidepressants, the theory behind them is that it's changing brain chemistry that's causing the problems. Well, we know for a
Right.
fact that anxiety and depression aren't caused by problems with brain chemistry. That's just how it is.
Right.
And so while some people may experience symptom relief, other people experience symptom relief by drinking alcohol. It doesn't mean the body's alcohol level is low. There's lots of
Mhm.
different ways we can manage symptoms, but again, none of them are getting at the core issue. So again, my question for you would be, if you're having symptoms of stress, which these sound like, where is the
Yes,
stressor coming from?
that's what the thing. I don't know. I'm retired. I have no money issues. I have a loving husband, a good family.
Hmm.
There's nothing in my lifestyle that is causing stress.
Hmm.
And my guess, and this is just a guess, is that it's from the COVID stuff.
Hmm.
Because when it first all happened, we were watching the news every night when everything was absolutely horrific
Hmm.
and everybody was going to die, and watching the news, reading the newspaper, listening to the radio. I mean, I was just bombarded with it, talking about it all the time. And we did that for a couple months, and then I just finally said, no, I can't do this anymore.
Sure. And
And I just cut it off.
when did you stop being concerned about COVID?
Well, it's funny. I never really felt like I was terribly concerned. It's just I'm just guessing that being bombarded with the news and all. So we probably maybe in May stopped watching the news.
Yeah.
And the beginning of July is when I got slammed really badly with the anxiety.
Sure.
So I hadn't been watching it for a while, but
Yeah.
and I still was not consciously worrying about it, but I was doing a lot of internet research and trying to find other opinions on it and trying to make myself feel like it wasn't as bad as they were saying it was. And so I don't know if that's it or not, but can you get better without knowing the cause?
You can. I mean, if you attribute your symptoms to stress and you use the strategies we explained in the recovery support area, yeah, you just reduce your stress and they should disappear. It would be nice to know where the source came from so that you can prevent rebounds of that type in the future. Let me ask you a few more questions. Were you having conversations with family members about COVID?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Family members, friends.
On the phone, internet?
On the phone, messaging, in person.
Sure, yeah.
Yes, a lot of it.
All right, and so even that can generate stress. Even though we don't feel stress, we might be, super intently passionate about it, driven by it, wanting to know more. All those things can drive the body up if we're not balancing that interest with rest. Because especially when we're thinking a lot, like when we're doing a lot of deep analyzing or whatever, that creates cognitive load. And what that means, the brain is working, but it's still stressing the body. And when we're speaking long hours and if we're impassioned about our conversations, well, what keeps our energy going is stress hormones. So in the background, we can be driving the body into stress and not even knowing why, just because we're passionate about something or intently focused on something. All that can occur. And then typically what happens when we decide to say, okay, enough is enough, we stop, and then 2 or 3 weeks later we have all these symptoms and we don't know why. It's kind of a common triggers when we see symptoms appear after the stresses are over.
Okay.
And the ones you talk about, the tight throat, the lump or the knot in the stomach, they're classic for stress. And we get a tight throat, lump in the throat feeling because stress hormones are coursing through the body and they're supposed to bring about specific actions. And one of them is tightening muscles, including the muscles in the throat area. That's where that tightness comes from.
And the chest.
Yeah, and certainly chest muscles, as well as the knot in the stomach, are classic for stress.
It's the stomach. It's not so much a knot. It's just like when you get butterflies in your stomach. Only I call eagles in my stomach because it's so gigantic. I mean, is that the same thing? Yeah,
it is. Well, a knot can be like a tightness due to the diaphragm muscles clamping down. That can happen as well. It's a common one. And as well, feeling like butterflies in the stomach is classic for anxiety and stress. Because why?
It's giant butterflies.
Yeah, and it is giant because the cortisol is released right behind the stomach from the adrenal glands, and if we're stressed, and that's where the cortisol is released from. Also, cortisol changes how the digestive function works. It suspends digestion. It slows down motility in the digestive tract. So there's a lot of things that happen when we're under stress, and if we're not
over the last 3 months or 4 months. I've lost 15 pounds and I'm a thin person anyway, so I lost a lot of weight over this.
Okay, well there you go. So, weight loss is another classic indication of stress.
And it starts frequently at it's now 3, it was 4 until the time changed, 4 o'clock in the morning. 4:30 in the morning, I will wake up if I'm even asleep. I've got horrible insomnia as well.
Okay.
If I even have to be asleep, which I rarely am at that time of day, but I'll feel it I call it a whisper in my stomach, just a little bit in my stomach, and then it will start to build and build and build and build.
Yeah.
And I'm not thinking about anything. I'm just lying there in bed or maybe even just awakened.
Yeah.
So that's typical?
Well, let me ask you about this. How long has your sleep been off?
It started with the anxiety. They both started at the same time.
Okay. And so how many hours of sleep do you think you get per night?
I would say 3 to 4 right now. I occasionally get a 7, maybe once a week I'll get a 7-hour night, and some nights feels like 0, and other nights 3 or 4.
And how concerned are you about these symptoms on a scale of 0 to 100%?
About 90.
Okay. So what you have is kind of a classic situation of how we end up where we are. Stress is going on, cranks the body up, stimulation goes up, we get symptoms. And if you're getting sleep disruption, if you're only getting 3 to 4 hours sleep, well, the body compensates for a lack of sleep by, guess what? Producing higher levels of cortisol. not only higher levels of cortisol, and especially first thing in the morning, but the cortisol cycle does not flatten out. Like I'll just explain this quickly here. When we're under a normal day, our cortisol will spike first thing in the morning as we wake up to get us going through the day. It reaches its highest peak within 1 or 2 hours after waking up. And then it slowly tapers off during the rest of the day and arrives at a lower level towards evening. And as we're getting ready for bed about 8 o'clock, it drops to a very low level so we can go to sleep. And if we go to sleep before 9 o'clock, then it stays at low, and then the body goes into even a deeper, lower level of cortisol. As the body starts going through the various sleep cycles during the night, the cortisol levels rise towards morning. That's the normal. Right. If a person's stress is normal and we're getting 7 to 8 hours sleep per night, that's usually what that pattern will follow. It's called the cortisol rhythm. It does it every day. Now, if we're stressed, however, and the body's producing higher levels of cortisol, well, that changes the rhythm. So we get a spike in the morning as normal as we're waking up after a deep rest. Well, it won't drop as much during the day. So it sort of flatlines during the day. It doesn't drop as much. And as we get to the evening, it actually increases. Well, when we get cortisol increasing at night, it's going to disrupt our sleep because the body can't engage the sleep mechanism. So either we fall asleep exhausted, and then we wake up 2-3 hours later and can't go back to sleep. It's because cortisol levels are high. And then when we don't sleep, the body produces even higher levels of cortisol. So we get stuck in that insomnia loop where we go for nights without sleep. The body gets exhausted. It finally does get a good sleep, and then we're right back into the exhaustion again. And it'll keep doing that unless we start to flatten that cortisol spikes by increasing deep relaxation, increasing rest, reducing stress and all that. As the body recovers from that, then the cortisol cycles revert back to normal again. So it's a long process because lack of sleep will increase cortisol. Cortisol what keeps the symptoms going, including the butterflies in the stomach and the lump in the throat and all the others. So this is, again, what you've explained to me makes perfect sense for stress. And it also makes perfect sense for where that came from initially, especially if you weren't feeling stressed. Now, I'll just add one more piece. A lot of times we don't think we're anxious because the way we live is normal to us. We don't even understand that the way we live is highly stressful, or what we're doing is stressful because we're not aware. Part of anxiety recovery is becoming more aware of our behaviors. So this is why it's important to look back and say, okay, what got me here? Sure, I might have been driving myself and talking about it all the time and so on and so forth. Well, what was the motivator behind that? Well, a lot of times it's keeping ourselves safe or trying to keep others safe, which is anxious behavior. So did you ever take one of our free tests on our website about anxiety?
I probably did. I don't remember what the results was. I think it was moderate or something like that.
Okay. Because that's a pretty good indicator of what our behaviors are like. And if you rate it in the moderate range, which I would probably say is pretty accurate, then sustained time interacting with others about this would be enough to get your body into the hyperstimulation mode. Yeah.
So I should not talk about it at all.
Well, it's pretty hard not to.
Yeah.
I would suspect you're probably a passionate person. You have certain beliefs and you like to talk with others about them. Women like to share those things, so it's a part of how you share that stress. So it's not that you don't want to talk about them. I would suggest just making sure you're balancing that energy with time to give the body sufficient rest so that it can keep itself in balance. Because here's the thing with anxious people.
I can't rest. How can I rest if I can't rest?
Well, this is now where the hard part comes in. Now, just before we get there, one thing I wanted to say is it's great to be impassioned. Usually anxious people are highly intellectual. We have a lot of things going on. We have, a lot of information to share with people, and that's great. And we like talking with people about those things, but we don't give our body enough rest to keep up. And so we drive the body into distress, and we're not even aware of it just because we're passionate. So, once you're through this, you want to recognize, okay, I can still be passionate about things, but I have to make sure I'm balancing that with sufficient rest so my body can keep up. And as we get older, the body needs more rest to balance the stress than it ever has. So we want to err on the side of gearing down. All right, now, how do you get back from where you are? Well, that's the challenge, because your body wants to go. Cortisol levels are high, so it's going to keep driving you to go. Sleep is going to be off because, cortisol levels are high. So this is where you have to manually and slowly teach your body to gear down. That would mean you want to be less passionate about COVID and having those conversations because they are going to get you going. So you want to dial those back for a while. You want to increase rest, increase the things you love to do that aren't driving your passions high. Spend time in nature. Really take a window where you can help your body retrain itself to be calmer, because the body will learn. That's the nice thing about the body. It learns from what we do one day and it applies it the next. So if we're gearing the body down one day, then the body's going to think that's the normal pattern. So it tries to replicate it the next. And as we keep teaching the body to be calmer and calmer day after day after day after day, and especially containing our anxiousness about how we're feeling, if we do that, the body will, again, eventually get back to its normal state. Symptoms disappear, sleep comes back on track, and we feel good again. But it's a process. I think one thing you've learned from the website, it takes a long time to get the body down from hyperstimulation, but we can do it when we continually to teach it day after day to be calmer and calmer and calmer. That's why we recommend deep relaxation every day, twice a day, because that deep relaxation period reduces cortisol, which is good. It also calms the nervous system, which is good. It also changes the GABA to glutamate imbalance, which is also good. But we have to do it day after day after day, so that becomes our normal.
It's hard. I try to find times to, it's not that I don't have time, but when the anxiety is raging as it is, so often I can't even calm down enough to be able to practice any deep relaxation.
Yep.
So what do you do?
Yeah, you have to work at it. I'll just explain. When I started mine, when I figured all this out through research, I realized, okay, so I can barely sit still for 2 seconds, never mind trying to deep relax, for 25 minutes. And so I started with a few seconds, or a minute here. And it's like, okay, I can't take this anymore. I have to get up. And I worked at it day after day. Every day I would work at it a little bit longer. So my deep relaxation stretched a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further. Finally, I was at 5 minutes where I could relax before I had to get up and go because I couldn't stand it. And as I keep retraining my body back to normal health, it eventually did there. But it was a long process. No, you can do it because your body can learn. You're not going to feel like you want to do it because your body wants to go. But this is where you have to put your thinking in charge, your behaviors in charge to get your body back on track. And as your body starts to calm down and gear down, it gets easier and easier and easier. So you can do it. It's just going to take work.
Well, it's not that I have to go all the time. It's just that when all that stuff is raging inside me, I can't even focus to try to, listen to any of these meditation apps or anything. It's just, It's so hard to even do that. So just do it for a minute or two and then hopefully build up.
Yeah, do it as long as you can and do it frequently throughout the day so you're teaching your body to be calmer. One of the reasons that it's hard for us to stay focused on all that is because, again, stress hormones are supposed to raise our awareness of danger. They are supposed to motivate us to get going. And that's why I mentioned, for me, I could hardly sit still because my mind was going so fast, my body was raging so much, and the symptoms were so high, it was really difficult. But that really just showed me, wow, was my body ever stressed? If it got that stressed where I couldn't relax when I wanted to, I knew that I had a lot of work to do. And this is where you have to, again, put your behaviors in charge of how you feel. You need to teach it to calm down. And the good news is we can. The body does learn. That's the good news. It just takes a long time.
And the calming messages that you've got on the website, I'm okay, I'm feeling fine, this is going to pass in a little while, whatever.
Yeah.
How many times do you keep repeating those over and over in one session, say? I mean,
well,
they're not doing good, but you say it takes time before it works. Is that?
It does. And that's why we always have to do our recovery work up front so we can benefit down the road. And I did those calming messages to myself, not only in my deep relaxation sessions, but all day long, because my body just wanted to rage and go and go and go. And as you know, sometimes when you get hyperstimulation to that point where it just seems like it's taken over, well, essentially it has. It's taken that mild, docile, as I mentioned at the website, we have this plot horse that you can take it wherever you want and it goes. Or you get on a bucking bronco. Well, when the hyperstimulation gets raging, it's a bucking bronco. We just have to hang on and do the best we can to steer it back on track. But again, the good news is we can when we persevere.
So if I'm sitting down and going to say some of these messages, how many times over and over do I say them per session, say?
Yeah. As I mentioned, I said them to myself all day long. Whenever I noticed my thoughts racing, I was like, whoa, settle down here, just relax, calm down here. That was my daily routine. And it took me as long as it took me to get that body nudge back on track. Now, again, the good news is as the body starts to settle, we don't have to do it as much because the body's easier to manage. But getting it off that peak is work, but it's work we can do.
Because this morning, when I woke up and the anxiety was going and going and going, and I just and I sometimes my legs will start shaking, and I just can't hold my body physically still.
Yep.
And is it important to try to make your body stay still even when it wants to shake?
Well, you want to increase your body's ability to relax whichever way you can. And I know when it gets to a hyperstimulated state that's high, where it's just going all the time, it's difficult because you just don't want to do it. You just don't feel good. It's hard to settle those legs, but it is beneficial to work at it so you can bring those moments of calm in during the day whenever you can.
Because this morning I forced myself to lie still and not shake. And I just kept saying, calm down, you're okay, be at peace, calm down, you're okay. And actually, after about 10 or 15 minutes, the anxiety did leave. I was shocked.
Yeah. And that's good, because you're going to get episodes where it feels like the anxiety is out of control, because when the body becomes hyperstimulated, again, it becomes erratic. And you can have these moments where it just feels like, oh, heck's going to break loose and there's nothing you can do.
Oh, yeah.
Because and that's how it works. So, but as you continue to work at calming it down and you get off that high edge, those episodes stop. So that's why it's important to do what you did, because the body does listen to what the brain is saying. If you keep saying, calm down, relax, calm down, relax, it does take time for the body to use up those excess hormones so that it can relax. So no, the more often you do that, and the more often you're able to calm your body will learn to be calmer. But you see how much work it's going to be, right?
That's the first time I've succeeded in calming it down by saying anything. Every other time I just, and the breathing too. Now you mentioned relaxed breathing. Everywhere else I say here, from therapists to online stuff, all says deep breathing, but you say relaxed breathing.
Yes. Yeah. Why we don't recommend deep breathing is because you can actually trigger panic attacks by over breathing. And when you say deep breathing, a lot of people do over breathe, and then all of a sudden they can also get into a hyperventilation mode where the body kicks into emergency response all by itself. But we don't have to deeply breathe to get the benefit. All we have to do is to breathe properly from the diaphragm. And it can be very relaxed and calm. One rule of thumb to keep in mind is you want to exhale out longer than you do inhale. Because when you exhale out longer, that actually stimulates the vagus nerve, which calms the body. And you can do it very relaxed. Just sit there and relax your breath. Calm your body down, because the body will follow if you do that. Because when you do that, the body releases a powerful tranquilizing effect, more powerful than you can get from any drugs when you do it properly. And so relaxed diaphragmatic breathing is what we recommend, because it works all the time without the threat of going into panic.
Does it work? Is that one of the things that will work even now, that you don't have to? I mean, it's like a silver bullet that will stop without doing it 50 million times?
Well, when the body's at a high ebb, which it sounds like yours is right now, it's just going to be a bumpy ride. But the more you persevere, you are going to train it to be calmer, and then it gets easier. But right now where you're at, it's going to take some work, and you're going to have to persevere. Okay, because I've done the deep breathing for months, the deep breathing, and then I read yours said the relax, which I'm still not entirely sure what that looks like, but. Yeah, we've had a number of people ask us to do a video about what it is and how it looks, just so a person can do it. That would be really helpful. Yeah, and we're just gearing up for all these videos now, so you'll probably see that in the near future. Yeah, because that would be very helpful to know, how many counts do you go for, how long do you hold it, and all that, because there's so many different versions of breathing out there. It's hard to know which one's the right one. Yeah, you bet. Now, one thing I will say, based on all of this, I mean, you have some work to do for sure, but you can put your mind at rest. You don't have to be searching for a whole bunch of different things, thinking that this is being caused by something else, because what you describe is pretty typical of what a lot of us go through. Okay. Yeah, and if you just say, okay, my body's really stressed at the moment here, I need to teach it to be calmer, and this is what I'm going to do, you'll probably find it gets easier and easier over the course of time. Okay. And containing the emotions about it, oh my God, I can't stand this, I'm going to die. I just can't go on like this anymore. What am I going to do? Am I going to be like this forever? It's never going to go away. I mean,
what tips do you have for containing those kind of emotions?
Well, one is that, all right, and a lot of those statements, we've heard of a zillion times, and I said on myself, oh my gosh, it's never going to go away. I'm going to have to suffer this for the rest of my life. These are terrible. I can't stand it. All right, so look at all the dramatic. Yeah, that's right. Look at all the dramatic statements there. Well, your body's going to respond if it thinks it's in danger. And if we keep saying stuff like that, it thinks it's in danger. So we have to change the messaging by saying, all right, all these bad feelings right now are caused by stress. My body's really stressed. I like to use the word hyperstimulation because it describes exactly what's going on in the body. All right, my body's hyperstimulated. It'll be better once I get my hyperstimulation down. So my job one is to calm the body down, teach it to be calmer. Teach it to be calm. That should be your mantra all day. I just need to calm my body down. Because again, as you do that, your sleep will get stretched out and will start getting better and better, which then means the body's not going to be producing the high levels of cortisol, which also helps to bring the stimulation down. And then you'll find that your body's easier to manage. Symptom episodes, start to diminish. They're not as strong. You'll get more control over them. So when they start to well up, you'll be able to say, okay, I'm just going to gear down here for a second, and you'll be able to control it. So all of those things are good. So that would be job number one, teaching your body to be calmer, reducing your stimulation levels so all of this goes away. And that's as simple as it can be.
And not let myself fall apart and have meltdowns.
Yep, because when you think about it, there's no reason to fall apart. If this is just stress and we can reduce and eliminate stress, there's no reason to get upset about it. Sure, we don't like them. They don't feel good, but that passes over the course of time, and next thing you know, we don't have them. So there's no reason to really be distressed about it.
Because I go around, my head is just spacey and dizzy all the time, which I'm guessing is partly anxiety, partly lack of sleep, and partly drug.
Yeah, absolutely,
but I don't know which is which. I never feel good. I can hardly function anymore. It's just gotten that bad, and I'm just not knowing what to do, or I'll just keep working at it. I'm a Christian too, so I'm good for you. I have been storming the gates of heaven with prayer.
All right. So now, as you know, God doesn't take that away from us. We have to work through it, right?
Well, he could.
Well, he could, but look at the valuable lessons we learn when we work through it. Remember, God's more interested in our character development than he is in our comfort.
I know that. But tell me what I'm learning. I keep trying to figure out, okay, God, what else do you want me to learn that I haven't learned already?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that you would be learning very quickly is that you're able to control your body. You're able to, because here's the thing. We all go through stressful times, and the body's going to react to stress no matter what we do. The better stress management we get, the less of a reaction it has. But even though if we go through a stressful time and the symptoms creep up, we don't have to freak out of them because we know what's going on. All right, I just calm myself down, and these tools work all the time, no big deal. So there's value right in that all by itself. And as you know, as you get older, a lot of times we have more stresses than less. So these are good lessons here.
Yeah, well, I'm already old, so I find that my life is much less stressful now that I'm retired and have grandkids to enjoy and all that. But but even that, I mean, I adore them. My favorite things to do is spend time with them. But that will send my anxiety through the roof, just being around them. Yeah. And it's just breaking my heart that I can't hardly do that because it's just, I wouldn't think it'd be a stressful thing, but it is.
Well, children, especially high energy grandchildren, we have grandchildren too. We love them to death, absolutely. But they can tax us and they can stress us. Yeah. And so if the body's already hyperstimulated, we just don't have a lot of reserve left. So this, again, another good lesson here is learn how to get, balance your stress. You'll have really good tools to do it naturally. You can keep all those things in check a little bit down the road, but it's going to take you some time to get there. That's the only thing I caution you. This does not resolve in a hurry.
Darn.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I want it gone, and I want it gone now.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what you've explained to me is very classic for anxiety. The symptoms and everything else you explained. You've added some other ones as we've been talking, insomnia and dizziness and lightheadedness. And a lot of that can come from not sleeping for sure. But if you can solve the whole thing by just working at training your body to be calmer, and you may have to set aside a few months or 3 months or even 4 months to do this till you feel in a way different place. So just be prepared. It can't, doesn't. I shouldn't say can't. Some people it does resolve quickly, and most of us it doesn't. It just takes a lot of day after day work to gear down. But hey, gearing down's nice.
I'm hoping that since it's only been around for 4 months, it won't take horrifically long to get rid of.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't lived with it all my life.
Well, good. Well, you should be able to turn this around by, easing your mind, focusing on the things we talked about, and just being patient. You should see a change.
I hope so, because I'm looking towards Christmas and thinking that the way I feel right now, I couldn't even do Christmas. I mean, to try and put up decorations or do anything is right now out of the question.
Yeah. And this also may require you changing your expectations so you can, afford time for your body to gear down. I had to do that. I had to block everything out of my life just to focus on my recovery. Because, when you look at hyperstimulation, it's like we use the glass analogy. Great big tall glass, and when our stress is normal, we got lots of reserve. We can pour a lot of water in there. But when we're hyperstimulated and we're right at the edge of the glass already, it doesn't take much to tip us over. So you really have really got to say, all right, so I need to build.
The main symptoms come out of nowhere, but the least little tiny thing, like I can't find my phone, and it just shoots through the roof.
Yep, absolutely, yeah, because your system's taxed, and we can undo all of that. That's the good news, yeah.
I pray that is true.
Yeah. Well, if you persevere at the things we recommend and you do it daily, you will see a change. That's just how the body, it has to respond. Yeah.
Okay, I just wish it would respond quicker.
Yeah, I think all of us have that wish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. You've been very helpful.
Oh, great. I'm glad we're able to provide some information there. And I wish you every success. I know it can be a difficult spot, and especially when the body's doing its own thing, but we can turn it around and just recognize a lot of us have been there lots of times. So the body has to respond in a certain way when we do certain things, and that's the good news. Yeah. Upon listening to this discussion, I wanted to mention a couple things. One is, as we start working at reducing stress, we should see an improvement in our sleep. And sometimes we might get our sleep back on track where we're getting, 6 to 7 hours, for 2 or 3 nights in a row, and we think, good, finally sleeping again, I should be feeling better. Well, one would think so, but that's not how it works. 3 or 4 nights of good sleep is not going to undo, 4 to 5 months of high stress. So as we're working at a recovery, we want to, continue to reduce the body stress overall and not judge how we feel based on our sleep, because sleep is one indicator that the body's calming down, but it's going to take time for the body to reduce the hyperstimulation overall so that we return completely back to normal non-hyperstimulated health where we're not having symptoms. So if you're getting, 3 and 4 nights of good sleep, it's unrealistic to think that those nights are going to, again, help your body completely recover from hyperstimulation. It's still going to take time and determined effort. It's going to be your cumulative effects of your stress reduction and rest and gearing your body down that's going to produce benefits down the road. It's not going to be 3 or 4 nights of good sleep. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that we couldn't feel better after those, good sleeps, because we can feel a little bit better, and sometimes we might even feel a bit more hyperstimulated than normal, because as the body rests, it might reset at a higher level because it's getting rest. So don't be surprised if you feel better after those 3 or 4 nights of good sleep, or if you feel worse for a little while. That's kind of how this works. Again, it's the cumulative effects of your recovery efforts that produce results over time. And it's usually over an extended period of time, not just a couple of weeks. So keep working at it. You'll find that you will start to feel better and better and better and better. But it's just going to take time.